Hey there! Welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2015 horror anthology film, Tales of Halloween. Now, this is one that I've been curious about for quite a long time. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of horror anthologies. I mean, I'm wearing my Tales from the Crypt hat. I got my Creepshow shirt on. Horror anthologies are honestly probably my favorite genre of film, because when they're done right, it's like watching multiple really good films in one movie. When they're done wrong, it's some of the worst shit you'll ever see, but it's worth the risk most of the time. And I will say I did enjoy Tales of Halloween. I thought this was an enjoyable, entertaining film for the most part, but I didn't love it. I didn't think it was a great anthology because there were some stories that I thought sucked. There were some other ones that were just pretty meh and mediocre, and then there were ones that you're like, why was this even in here? Um, I liked it more than some of my friends did, that's for sure. This isn't really a rant because I wasn't like that pissed off at the film. I mean, even the segments I didn't really care for that much still had some interesting sort of things. Like they had some potential, but they weren't fully realized. Um, this one has like 10 stories. So there's a lot of stories here. So there's 10 stories in this film. They're all directed by different directors, and features a pretty good solid cast of actors and actresses. Not a whole lot of people that you're gonna like instantly recognize, but there were still a lot of capable people when it comes to the actors and the actresses. Um, but let's just dive right into it. Now, before I get into talking about each story, I want to talk about the framing segments, which is a radio show by, which is actually hosted by Adrianne Barbeau, who plays this character. I forgot her name, but she hosts this radio show, and she's talking about all these different sort of things that happen or whatever, and then it's a very loose and kind of flimsy framing device, but it's fun to hear Adrianne Barbeau, and she does a great job with that. It's almost like her doing her part in The Fog all over again. Um, Also, one more thing I want to talk about is the opening credits. Some really crappy looking CGI that's trying to look like, I don't know, a pop-up book or something. It really looks god awful. Like when you first see this film, when you get to the opening credits, you're like, oh my god, am I in for another Creepshow 3? Because it looks like it was this. It might have been created by the same people who did the opening credit sequence for that film. Um, Thankfully, it's absolutely 100% no Creepshow 3, despite its crappy CGI opening credits. So the first story is called Sweet Tooth. This one is written and directed by Dave Parker. It deals with this kid named Mikey, who just finished trick-or-treating. His parents have left him in the care of his babysitter and her boyfriend, and they're watching the original Night of the Living Dead. There's actually quite a few segments in this that have footage from the original Night of the Living Dead. Probably because it was public domain, and they didn't have to charge that much, or not necessarily charge that much. They didn't have to pay that much to use clips from it in their film. And there's another public domain horror film that's used in other segments as well. I think it's Carnival of Souls. But anyway, they're watching Night of the Living Dead, and the boyfriend decides to tell this story about this kid who was never allowed to have any of his trick or treat candy by his parents because they were like, it'll rot your teeth and it's bad for you. But they let him go trick or treating. So something happens where the kid finally snaps because this is what happens. He sees what his parents are doing with his candy. They're making out and just eating all his candy, and that sends him into a rage, and then he kills them. And in a really gruesome fucking twist, uh, he ate all of the candy, and because he just has such a hankering and a hunger for candy after he's eaten all of it. He's not satiated, so he goes in and disembowels his parents, and eats the candy from inside of their stomachs. And it's really fucking grisly. That's such a gruesome image. And the kid gets the name Sweet Tooth because the kid has a real sweet tooth. And it's set up as kind of an urban legend of sorts. But then Sweet Tooth is real, and he comes in and he attacks the babysitter and her boyfriend. He spares the kid, Mikey, because he left a candy bar for him, and because that's the whole thing, like, you better leave some for Sweet Tooth, otherwise he's gonna come for you. But it kind of, it ends in a way where it's really a bummer. Like, I was kind of alright and into this segment until the ending, where the kid is blamed for the death of his babysitter and her boyfriend, because they're sitting there on the couch disemboweled and the kid's there, and I was like, I would have rather preferred it have not ended that way. Like, why do you gotta do the kid like that? The kid's already been through enough shit already, being terrified by Sweet Tooth, and now he's gonna get blamed for Sweet Tooth's actions. But despite the fact that I wasn't that big on the ending, it was still an okay segment. Features some good practical gore. It was, and I didn't mind the whole setup of it, and the structure of Sweet Tooth, so on and so forth. The next one is called The Night Billy Raised Hell. This one is written by Clint Sears and directed by Darren Lynn Bousman. Now, the direction by Darren Lynn Bousman is actually really good. I think that's one of the real highlights of this particular segment. But the writing by Clint Sears, not so much. It's something to do with this kid named Billy, who tries to start trick-or-treating early in the afternoon. I think he's with his older sister and her boyfriend, and they're giving him a lot of shit, and they try to get him to pull a prank on this guy's house, and the kid doesn't want to do it, so then they're giving him shit and being like, oh, you want to be Mr. P Pants or whatever the fuck, or if you don't do it, we're gonna tell everyone that you pissed your pants. I'm like, God, like, his older sister is a bitch, her boyfriend's a son of a bitch. You're just like, why? Who gives a fuck about any of these people? The kid, he succumbs to peer pressure, eggs the house, but then he eggs on the owner, who is apparently a demon or some shit. His name is Mr. Abandon, and he's played by Barry Bostwick, which Barry Bostwick, I didn't even recognize him in the role, so kudos to Barry Bostwick, and Mr. Abaddon is actually the name. And he just takes the kid, pulls him inside the house. His sister and her boyfriend, like, don't even do anything. Like, they're just like, all right, whatever. I would think the older sister would do something, after her younger brother, gets dragged and just pulled into this stranger's house, but nope. And then what follows is the kid who's dressed up like a devil. He is, I guess, kept captive by Mr. Abaddon. And the twist is that there is this kid in a devil costume doing all this crazy shit, robbing banks and just going overboard with the tricks. And the twist is that it's not really the kid who's doing it. It's some other demon that's friends with or is employed by Mr. Abaddon. And the end of the segment is Billy getting arrested by police for doing all this shit. And I'm like, and then he pees his pants. I'm like, the fuck is that? It was just silly. It was dumb. It wasn't funny. It was annoying. I wasn't a fan of the night Billy raised hell. The next one is called Trick. It's written by Greg Commons and directed by Adam Gierasch. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Adam Gierasch. This one was okay. It essentially is one of those kids go nutsoid kind of stories, where there are... Actually, no, Yeah, that's what it is. I almost got it confused at a different one. So this is a bunch of friends who are hanging out together on Halloween night. The doorbell rings. A little girl in a witch costume is there, and she just says trick and stabs this guy who answered the door in the chest. And I was like, okay, all right, that's pretty fucked up, okay. And apparently, for some reason, all the kids in this neighborhood have lost their fucking shit and are killing people and attacking people. You find out later why that's the case, but at first it seems like it's totally random. But then you find out in a twist that one of the people that is at the party, one of the, not necessarily one, I mean, two of the people that are at the party are actually into some really twisted shit where they like torture kids and like take photos and share it with their friends and shit. And the kids are going around attacking them as a way of revenge. And the segment ends with them getting tortured and killed by the kids. I was just like, I don't know. I mean, I actually would have rather preferred that to be more of a mysterious thing. The kids are just, going nuts or something. Instead of, this whole setup where, it's intentional and so on and so forth. And it was all right. It was an okay segment. It's another one of those segments that was just mediocre and just meh. But it wasn't something that I found particularly awful or annoying, like the night Billy raised hell. Then you have The Weak and the Wicked. This one features Grace Phillips, Booboo Stewart, and Noah Segan. They're like messing with this kid who is apparently doing some stuff on trick-or-treating, but they're interrupted by a teenager in a devil costume played by Keira Gilchrist. And he has this photo of like this demon, and he's saying all these things, and you get like some actual backstory and some connection and threads to some of this stuff, where the kid in the demon costume actually has a connection to these bullies, which I don't think they're really bullies. They're more gang members than anything else. And I didn't mind this segment for a few reasons. One of them was some of the performances. I mean, in particular, Grace Phipps as Alice, the gang leader. I thought she was sexy and actually genuinely intimidating and badass. Like I thought she did a really good job in that role. Um, so eventually, you find out that she was involved in the murder of this kid's family, along with these other two accomplices. When they were like kids, one Halloween night, they just decided to raise some hell and burned a trailer house down. And that happened to be the trailer that this kid who's wearing the demon costume, um, his parents lived in. So what happens is you're just playing this waiting game for this demon to show up, and it takes its sweet time, and the kid's almost at death's door because he's almost about to get ganged up on and straight up just murdered by this gang. But then the demon actually does show up, and it kills the gang members, and the kid gets his revenge on All Hallows Eve. The demon makeup was kind of chintzy looking, but I didn't mind the setup. The villains were effective in terms of how much you hated them and you wanted to see them get their just desserts. And, you know, it was a different sort of take on a demon being being summoned. Most of the time when demons are summoned in films, it's like, oh, I'm going to summon a demon, to grant me wishes or something or another. This time it's actually for revenge, similar to something like Pumpkinhead, when the demon was summoned for revenge purposes in that particular film and that story. And it helped too that it's pretty short. It really didn't overstay its welcome. Yeah, I liked it. I liked The Weak and the Wicked. Written by Molly Millions and directed by Paul Solet. The next one is called Grinning Ghost. This one just seemed really pointless, and just what even was the point of this? So you have a girl named Lynn, played by Alex Essoe, prepares to leave her mother's house and this Halloween party that she's throwing. And her mother's played by Lin Shaye. After hearing her mother talk about this ghost story about a girl named Mary who was mocked her whole life for her disfigured physical appearance, as a ghost, Mary now terrorizes people on Halloween and laughs at them behind their backs. And so the segment tries to play on paranoia. It tries to really build some sort of suspense around that. But it just really falls into a lot of predictable, tiresome kind of tropes. And, the whole, the girl, she is trying to drive away from the party and her car breaks down, and then something happens and she actually breaks her phone, so now she's alone at night, and she swears she hears laughing, and she thinks that the ghost is watching her, and then she goes to her home and she's terrified, and she turns around and she doesn't see anything. Her dog gets freaked out. She thinks that, it's just my imagination, and then she sees that, Mary is actually sitting beside her. And apparently there's some connection with the last segment called Bad Seed, where I guess this ghost actually came in and took her eyesight, but the police dismissed it as hysterical blindness or whatever the hell. Um, eh, that one is one of the most forgettable segments out of the entire film. Then you get Ding Dong, which Ding Dong, it sucked dong. Like this was another one that I did not care for. I think it was trying to do some sort of allegory and metaphor for childbirth or wanting a child, and how it can be a monstrous kind of thing sometimes. I don't know what they were trying to go with here. This one was written and directed by Lucky McKee. So this one deals with this guy named Jack, played by Mark Center, and his wife Bobby, played by Pollyanna McIntosh. And Bobby's distraught by the fact that she has no children of her own. Jack tries to cheer her up. And this leads to an argument, and Bobby then turns into some red demonic witch and starts clawing at Jack's face. And in the present time, Jack and Bobby are prepared to meet more trick-or-treaters, and Pollyanna McIntosh's character, Bobby, is trying so hard to keep her mind off the fact that she wants kids. And then, of course, eventually something happens where she snaps again, and that's because Jack finally realized, I don't want, you to have kids, so I don't trust you. I don't think it's going to be safe, so I got a vasectomy. And then she turns into the red demon witch again, and I think she winds up, she drags Jack into the oven, which apparently resembles hell for some reason, and then she's like, I'm melting, and then she dies? What? I don't know what the fuck was even going on with the segment. It made no sense. The makeup effects on the red demon witch was pretty decent, and Lucky McIntosh is a pretty sight, but like, I don't understand what the fuck was going on. Well, not Lucky McIntosh, my bad, Pollyanna McIntosh. The writing by Lucky McKee was definitely not a pretty sight. It was quite ugly. This is just so all over the place and pretentious, and what the hell is up with that ending? I'm melting! Like she's the fucking Wicked Witch of the West. And there's all these questions, like, is she a demon? Is she not? Like, what even the fuck was the point of this whole fucking segment? And speaking of what was the point, then we get to This Means War, which was written and directed by Andrew Kasch and John Skipp. This one, I don't know why this was included in a horror anthology, because there's no real supernatural horror. There's nothing science fiction about it. There's nothing strictly horror about this segment. It's more of just a comedy. It's a dark comic segment. It's not really a horror segment. The only thing horror about it is the fact that it deals with Halloween decorations, and there's some death involved. So you have this guy named Boris, played by Dana Gould, who is sick and tired of his neighbor Dante, played by James Duvall, who's this death metal, heavy metal guy who has all his friends over, and they're making all this ruckus and loud music, and his Halloween display is bloody and gory, and Boris's isn't, and so on and so forth, and who fucking gives a shit. It's basically just a Halloween version of Deck the Halls, but with more of an edge to it. So what eventually happens is Boris has enough of his neighbor's shit, gets in a fight with him, and they wind up impaling themselves on a sign, and they both die. That's really the best way to sum up that segment. Then you have Friday the 31st, which was, I would say, I don't know if it would have 100% be my favorite segment of this, because I also really liked Bad Seed, but this one was a definite gem. This was definitely one of the better segments out of the entire film. And you know, as I'm going through the segments here, the more I realize that there really aren't a lot of genuinely good segments here. There are a lot of segments that were meh, mediocre, average, or worse. So, at the end of the day, like I said, I liked this film, but the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of just in the middle on it. It's, to be fair, I think I can only really give this a average rating, because I think that's what it deserves, because there's so many average stories in this film. And then there's other ones that just feel like they're pointless, or they're frustrating because they just don't make any sense, or they just aren't really that satisfying. But Friday the 31st is not one of them. Friday the 31st, written by Mike Mendez and Dave Parker, directed by Mike Mendez, is a fun parody of Friday the 13th, where you have this guy who is clearly meant to be Jason Voorhees, and he's hunting down this girl, and he kills her, and what happens next is there's a UFO that shows up and sends a beam down on this Jason wannabe. And then this claymation alien appears, like dressed in like a little cute costume with like a little bucket, trick or treat bucket, looking like a pumpkin. And he walks up to the Jason Voorhees wannabe, and he goes, "Twinkle tweet." Like, you would think this is something you would think like, okay, this is dumb, right? But it works. It's so fucking cute. Like, this stop motion, this claymation alien going twinkle tweet is like one of the cutest things you will ever see in your entire life. And because the Jason wannabe is just as angry and violent as the real Jason Voorhees, it doesn't want to give him any treats, so he just stomps on him. So that pisses off this alien, which then goes inside the dead body of the girl that he killed, and then what ensues is this insane battle between this dead girl who is possessed by this alien and this wannabe Jason Voorhees. And they're like cutting limbs off, and there's blood just spraying like all over the place. It's a real crowd pleaser, and it's inventive, and it's fun, it's clever, it's witty, and it's a nice satire and homage to Friday the 13th. And you got just that freaking alien is just the cutest thing ever. Twinkle tweet. But then you get the ransom of Rusty Rex. And this one, you have John Landis, who plays a character in this. Okay, alright. So, John Landis plays this guy named Jebediah Rex, who apparently has this son named Rusty, or so you think, and he lets the kid out for trick-or-treating. There's these bank robbers, Hank and Dutch, who decide they're going to kidnap this kid and hold him for ransom so they can make, a buck off of this millionaire. And what happens is you find out in a twist that this isn't really a kid, it's some fucking demon. Again, these fucking demons. Again, the fucking demon, henchman in the Billy segment, and then this demon here, or goblin, whatever the fuck it is. And this goblin's making these kidnappers' life a living hell, fucking with them. They try to kill it. They try to give it back to John Landis, but to no avail, because once it's given away and once it finds someone, it never leaves them alone. It always follows them and is always attached to them forever. And they try to, get John Landis to take the demon back, but he's like, fuck you. This was another one that was just, I had some fun with the twist and the fact that, the kidnappers, they call they call Jebediah up and they're like, hey, we have your son Rusty. He's like, oh, you have Rusty? All right. Keep him. And hangs up the phone. It's like, what the fuck? What the fuck? Like, why did you want your son, man? It's like, I don't want him. And don't call this number again. So that was a little fun. I did have some fun with that. And I thought the two guys played the kidnappers. They had some good chemistry, and they did a good job handling the goofiness of it all. I mean, when it comes to like a more comedic version, or of, I don't know if version is the right word, but a more comedic tale versus some of the other ones, this was a little bit more satisfying when it comes to its humor. But at the same time, it still wasn't anything particularly amazing. Then you get Bad Seed, which is written and directed by Neil Marshall. And this was really enjoyable. I really liked this one. I don't think it needed to tie into the other stories. It did not need to try to make this entire film into a interconnected, interwoven story in the vein of Trick or Treat. I don't think it really needed to do that, because unlike Trick or Treat, it doesn't really fit with Tales of Halloween, because there are other, bits and moments that don't really connect. And some of it's just very superficial, like, oh, there's the UFO in the sky, and there's this character, and there's that, and what, it's just like, eh. But this one deals with these super pumpkins. So there's this poor guy who is, I think he finishes his jack-o'-lantern. And before he's able to show it to his girlfriend or whatever, he gets eaten in such a just brutal and gory and gruesome way by this pumpkin, this super pumpkin that just latches onto his head and bites his head off, and just crawls away with vine legs, like it's a spider. And you're just like, oh my god. And it's done. I think it's also done with like stop motion or something like that. And this is like if you took Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and made it Attack of the Killer Pumpkins, and it's a lot of fun. You have this cop, this hard-nosed cop played by Kristina Klebe, Detective McNally, and she's on the case. And she's hunting down this killer pumpkin, and there's a fun sequence in the end where, she shotgun blasts the pumpkin to bits. And then it sets things up as if this is going to be like another like film, like it could be like a whole other story altogether, where they visit this scientist who is responsible for making these super pumpkins, played by Joe Dante, and the director Joe Dante. And the corporation is called Clover Corp. Clover Corporation, which is totally a reference to Halloween 3. And so they have these. You just find out that there's this whole room, this whole warehouse with nothing but super pumpkins, and we're like, oh my god, we're fucked. And that's how the film ends, is with this segment and just setting things up for this huge, just insane follow up. And to be honest, I want to see that movie. I want to see Attack of the Killer Pumpkins. I want to see the film with Kristina Klebe and, Joe Dante as the kooky scientist and the super pumpkins. And you could have different versions of these super pumpkins. Like, they all act differently. They're not all the same. Some fly. Some have these other abilities. Something like straight out of Gremlins 2. I think there's a lot of potential for, a lot of, good horror fun with this concept. And when it comes to the overall film, Tales of Halloween, it's not terrific. But it's also not entirely horrific either when it comes to its overall quality. Like I said, there are a lot of segments that are just meh, pretty mediocre, pretty average. And there are a couple that I didn't care for at all. They were just confusing or annoying, or pretentious, like Ding Dong. But there were others that I really enjoyed. Friday the 31st, Bad Seed. Overall, you could do worse when it comes to horror anthologies and then Tales of Halloween. I guess because I set my expectations really low going in, I wasn't that disappointed by it. I wanted it to be at least okay, and I definitely feel that it was at least an okay anthology. I'm not going to bend over backwards to add this to my collection, but it's a film that I wouldn't mind picking up for cheap someday, because it's a definite time waster. There are some segments that I like a lot more than others, but even when it comes to like the mediocre ones, like there were a good number of them that I didn't hate. I just didn't find they were anything really special. I just thought they were just there. They were just, adequate, average segments. There were only 2 segments out of the entire film that I really did not like at all. So so that's a pretty good ratio for an anthology. But it really needed to have more segments that were legitimately good or great to make it more than just an average, alright film. I would recommend it, though, if you're a fan of horror anthologies. I do think that there is a good amount of fun to be had with this. Yeah, I really don't know what else to say about Tales of Halloween, except thanks for watching my review, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.